I started this stream that one of the things that this game does is that formally, like, the game's form, like the structures that are built into it, call into mind some of the more banal third-person shooters that are on the console. So, like, you see Dan here, and he acts sort of like a boorish American at the start of the game before sort of opening up and turning into a surprisingly complex character. Also, this is a scene where Shindo goes to the bathroom and takes a shit, and Mark Filipowicz wrote a article on it, so people should look that up, because he literally wrote an article about the moment in a game where somebody went to go take a shit, and it's a really good article. No, but what was I saying? So the structures of this game recall really banal shooters of the time, so something like Gears of War, which is efficient and you know, very satisfying in the way shooting works. Intentionally or not, Binary Domain recalls those things, and in a way that's not too dissimilar, but not quite on par with the way that Spec Ops: The Line remixes the images that we associate with, like, modern warfare games. This is doing the same thing with, like, future games, or games wherein you're sort of fighting against mass hordes of enemies. And one of the ways that it does that is, so I'm fighting against waves and waves of, robots, but halfway through the game, I get Kane here, so I have a robot on my team. And I have to sort of struggle with the notion that Kane is just as human as any of the other characters I'm interacting with. And Kane is not somebody who I interact with in any way that's functionally different than the way I would interact with Faye or Shindo or any other character. If I want to talk to him, I use these commands. If I have my Kinect on, I use voice commands. So I talk to Kane the same way that I would talk to Faye or to anybody else. He's just as human as anybody else by the game's definition of human. He also has free will, which comes back later on, depending on your trust level with Kane. That's something that's sort of noteworthy. But this game takes the image of sort of being an empty shooter and then layers all these other things on top of it, so it is a fairly perfunctory and satisfactory shooter, but then you add in something like the interactions that you have with characters. So like this would be, I could use Kinect and talk to them and have all these things, and the range of phrases that exist that are recognized are really intense. And the importance of having that range of recognized terms, so like I'll even pause and show it off for a second. Where's options? Recognized voice settings. Recognized word list. Everybody's name, variations of their names, variations of attack, retreat, this, and this. Fuck, shit, damn, like any type of swear you can think of. One of them is I love you. And Brendan's written about the use of that in the game. But there is a moment in the game where you have to fight, where you fight someone, and one of the things you can just do is shout out that you love them. And
after all, they're a hilarious bunch.
It's very bizarre to do that in a game, and the voice recognition, what it's functionally doing is it's taking the sort of hollow shooter aesthetic that exists within Binary Domain and adding an emotional component onto it that's sort of turned into a system, right? So I got distracted by Shindo. So I talk to Kane the same way I talk to Faye, the same way that I talk to anybody else. My controller just disconnected. And that range of highly recognized words is also sort of a comment about AI, which this game is about, right? So what is AI? Well, it's a sort of function on itself based upon certain understandings or impulses or inputs, the same way that our human intelligence functions. So characters in this game have AI, and then they also react to the stimuli that I provide vocally. So you layer that on top of a shooter, you get something complicated, and then you get this thing which is the trust system, where you see all these bars next to all the characters. and that represents the amount of trust that they have in you. And the better you are in the middle of a battle or something like that, they might respond to it like they did right there. And that will affect the way that they react to you. It plays into the endings that you can get at the end of the game. And the point of systematizing that interaction... Shit. Sorry, robot going crazy. The point of systematizing that interaction is that it takes the notion of human relationships and it turns them into a game. And it turns them into a system. So, I'm playing a game about robots and what is or isn't robots, and one of the things that the game does is make me think of my relationships with people in very basic, unrefined ways. It makes me reduce the complexities of human emotion and human interaction to a numbers game. It's a bar to fill up. But unlike something like Mass Effect, where that's just sort of something you take for granted, where it's like there's this implicit influence bar that you have over Tali or some other character, in this case, it's commenting upon the player, and it's also commenting upon the characters in the sense that my relationship with these characters can be a very mechanical thing where I'm just sort of trying to please them by appealing to certain points that they have or things like that. I'm getting distracted again by talking, but the point is that you have all of these things that are tossed upon a fairly vapid shooting experience, although satisfying in like a kinesthetic sense. Like, it feels good to shoot enemies in this game because of the feedback that you get. But it reduces the complexities of human interactions into a numbers game and to a sort of weird binary where, you know, I have to talk to people over the Kinect, and there's only a limited amount of things that I can say, and then I also have to, I have to think of people's liking me as, like, how much does this AI entity like me? How many points can I have from this interaction? What is the right thing for me to say? And it's very dehumanizing, the sort of layer of systems that are on top of it. And then when you have that sort of basic, like, oh, this is like a simple shooter thing, right? You have this formal recollection of games that sort of have less emotional, like, expression or fecundity or whatever, which is a word that I use too often, and people have complained about me using that word, but fuck it, fecundity is a good word. A lot of games don't have fruitful emotional grounds, nor do their characters express themselves in a fruitful emotional way. And the characters in Binary Domain do, but the player facilitating those interactions does not. I think of Shindo, right here, and I say, okay, his bar is a little lower. What do I have to do to get his bar higher? As opposed to, like, what do I have to do to make Shindo like me? I treat him like a non-entity. I treat him the same way that I would treat Kane, which is a statement in and of itself, but I also just treat him as this AI entity because by virtue of the fact that he's just a character in a video game I'm playing, that's what he is. He's just a collection of code that responds to certain things, right? But there's all sorts of complicated things that can happen with this game. So keeping it in that sort of banal area of, like, oh, it's a cover shooter and it does this and this and this, like, you can just have functional shooting that calls to mind sort of emotionally hollow experiences, and then add these complications to them that point out how emotionally hollow interaction in video games actually is. But then you can use that hollowness to talk about the human condition, right? You can use it to talk about the idea of, like, what is a human thing, what is a human interaction, what is a human experience, and you do that by expressing how not human interaction with your party members are. Because interaction with your party members is this weird simulacrum, or that was some good work, Dan. Keep it up. Sort of inefficient, like, see right here, like, this sort of real inefficient facsimile of what an actual conversation is.
I hope you can handle it.
So my interactions with these characters are not different, so that means that, you know, Faye is the same as Kane, is the same as Shindo, is the same as Big Bo, is the same as any other character, but my interactions with them are hollow because there are all these other systems on top of them, and my acknowledging that hollowness helps support some of the fundamental themes of the
We might at
game.
least find some clues. Let's pick up the pace.
Basically, that